remember last week when I was in your hotel room when your wife was gone?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you breaking in, and then I called the
911.
police. Yeah, yeah, and they would not come to help me because of two-tiered policing. So yeah, then that was a bit scary. But no, we got to hang out in person. That was cool, man. That was really
It
cool.
was cool. Yeah, that was cool. Got to hang out in person. Um, we got to, be at a party together the day before, and that was fun.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and a week has passed, and we've gone from celebrating America to celebrating the United States being the online content for the vast majority of people, just celebrating the death of people. So
It was
the
fun while it
usual.
lasted. Those memes from the World Cup were great. You know, you had Japanese people being super excited, but we can't have nice things. We can't have nice things for long.
No, Senator Lindsey Graham died last night, and the usual suspects. You'll be shocked to learn that the Nazis, Nick Fuentes and his cabal, and then the communists, the Young Turks, sank Mehdi Hassan, and Anna Kasaparian, are all dancing on his grave. And then the third group is the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian radicals. If in death, you have tankies and Nazis and pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, pro-Islamic jihadist um, dancing on your grave, then you probably led a pretty decent life.
I can only hope we can all be so lucky. I really hope that a Nazi celebrates my death. I hope a commie celebrates my death. If only we could be so lucky. Something about those shows, though, whether it's Nick Fuentes or the Young Turks or whatever, I often give you shit about getting like angry on here and giving rants, but it's a very general anger, and it's just kind of an anger at people being stupid, right? That's the vibe I get from you when you're angry. Do you
Like
think
my
that's
father,
accurate?
I do not suffer fools.
Okay, so I'm being pretty accurate here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
when I see the Young Turks, when I see Nick Fuentes, they're really getting mad at people, right? They're getting mad at a person for being that person. And it seems so like, it just seems so gross. And I think we do a good job of pointing out the point that it doesn't matter if you're on the fucking right or left. Who really gives a fuck if you're a gross person being gross? And when I see their rants, it's that visceral, like anger. People make comparisons to Hitler far too much, but there's something about the Hitler speeches that really resonate in my mind as the epitome of hatred for a person. And I sense a little bit of that. Right, left, and center, it doesn't matter when I see these online people you're talking about.
The
Do you agree?
intersectionality of the extreme right and the extreme left, and the pro-Palestinian movement, which is brimming with literal outright supporters of Hamas and Hezbollah.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, Hassan Biker said Hezbollah was his favorite flag, and of course, his supporters were like, "He's just talking about the design of the flag."
Can I
Well,
say one thing? I do
yeah.
appreciate the Hezbollah color scheme. I do appreciate the color scheme. It's kind of cool.
At no point are you supposed to praise what the Nazi flag looked like or its color scheme.
Can I say that the Nazi uniforms were fly as fuck? Because they were. Like, I'm sorry. It doesn't mean like, oh, I think that the Nazi uniforms are fly as fuck. Let's throw a bunch of Jews in the oven. No, it's I think their uniforms are fly as fuck. Full stop. They were evil people. The Hezbollah flag, I like the color scheme, that kind of green on yellow kind of look. I think it slaps, as the kids say. But anyways, please proceed. And the kids
I'll
don't
give
say
I'll,
slaps
I'll give
anymore.
you the uniform, and I guess I'll acquiesce to your color scheme on the Hezbollah flag. But I think
Oh,
we both,
one more thing. I'm sorry to bring
yeah.
this up. The national anthem of the Soviet Union is a straight up banger. Everything else they did sucks. All right, that doesn't raise them up to a level of respect by any
Right.
means. You know, the killing tens of millions of people for really no reason at all
Oh, I was told
whatsoever.
today by the
It's a
online
joke.
left that none of that happened. That the Soviets didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it happened. It didn't
No,
happen.
no. I mean,
Oh
the
shit.
conservative estimate is 20, 25 million Um, the other estimates are 35, 40 million. During the Cold War, it was 50 million. And that's, we didn't have as much information during the Cold War as we do now, obviously. But
Mhm.
even if it's only 10 million, right? Like, oh, well, it's only 10 million. They only slaughtered 10 million of their own people. Like, okay, have a
For very
cookie.
good reason too. They were going to hit the utopia, which they hit. I don't know if you knew this. They actually hit the utopia, and there totally wasn't years of famine and war and needless death. Was it George Orwell who was in the debate against a communist who said that you can't make an omelet without breaking a few
Without
eggs? To which
breaking,
he responded, "Where's your omelet?"
very few of them are not anonymous accounts, right? Like the only ones that are not anonymous accounts, like you don't know who the person is, are the ones that make their living being communists and Nazis openly on Twitter while they pay Elon Musk for their blue check mark and collect generous monthly payouts from him and don't have real jobs, right? The rest of them are anonymous, and they have to keep it that way because celebrating the death of a United States senator is probably not going to work at your work, right? Like if you're, it does depend on where you work, but it's kind of like the people that literally danced and cheered when Charlie Kirk got assassinated. A number of them lost their jobs. So many of the people that are dancing on the grave and celebrating the death of Lindsey Graham are anonymous, and good for them, I guess. And I mentioned the people that celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk, and I was not a Charlie Kirk. I was not a follower of Charlie Kirk. I didn't listen to his podcast daily. I don't think I'd ever listen to his podcast at
But
all. I
I
knew who
think
he
you
was.
would admit one of his best qualities is he supported discussion and polite discussion amongst those he disagrees with, and that is a
Yeah,
high virtue. Correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, a lot of people who were stupid enough to go online with their employer's name in their bio,
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, or with a LinkedIn profile attached to their social media profile in their bio, and then they went, "Yay, Charlie's dead! Got it in the neck, motherfucker! I'm so happy." And then normal people went, "That's kind of fucked up, dude." And
Why did I lose my job at Chase Bank over this? Like, this makes no sense.
yeah, correct, yeah.
You know
So
what I think's hilarious is I texted you saying that I really need a break from libtards for the next week or two, and we spent 10 minutes talking about them.
we did, and we talked about the Nazis too.
We did. But hey, I didn't want Lindsey Graham to die, but that happened, so I get it. I get it. Mark, I compile things to run by you,
Yeah,
like true false questions.
yeah.
I was wondering if you would indulge me in me running something by you and seeing if you true or false agree with me and want to go into detail.
Let's
Are you
fucking go.
down? Are you game?
Let's fucking go.
Mark, you've been in rooms where important political people make important political decisions. Are they just as susceptible to groupthink as, let's say, an average college group project? Or is there something special about them? Are they just as susceptible to groupthink as that college group? Yes or no? True or false?
It depends on what time period we're talking about. So I would say no to 40 years ago. I would say yes to today,
Hmm.
right? So politics has become so partisan and so toxic, and people are so immersed in embracing, one side and being intellectually bound to one dogmatic set of beliefs that today politicians and people with political power who make decisions are vastly more likely to be susceptible to groupthink than they once were. Yes.
So the famous 13 days Cuban Missile Crisis, you don't think they were really because everything was so important, right? Because everything was so about keeping the world from ending, there was no time for groupthink silliness. Would you say that's
Man,
true?
you know, if you read the interactions that have been made public, which is most of it, that took place in the Kennedy White House during the Cuban Missile Crisis, yeah, you're absolutely, we have the historical record of spirited debate among everybody in the room. Did they come to a conclusion, come to a consensus? Yes, they did. But there was no groupthink, and there were a lot of nuanced in between opinions. Like a good example would be, well, let me start with Curtis LeMay felt, that we should go ahead and checkmate the Soviets and possibly even attack them in a preemptive nuclear strike, because he felt that the Cuban Missile Crisis was a provocation that we could never let happen again. Right?
Mm.
And then you had all kinds of people in the room that they certainly disagreed with the Soviets, at every level. But how do I want to put this? There were enough voices in the room saying, yeah, we have to avoid a catastrophe at all costs, even if it makes us look weak for a while.
Could it happen again with current leadership? With the world that we live in now, if there was such a obvious danger like the Cuban Missile Crisis, would they be capable of having those open discussions? Do you think we would just throw all that stupid like groupthink bullshit, I'm on this team bullshit? Do you think we could throw it off to the side?
I would certainly hope so. I would hope so. My guess is that a lot of politicians know it would be groupthink in that room. Do I believe that a cabinet and a National Security Council appointed by Kamala Harris would have members that had differing views? No, I don't believe that. I believe they'd all be singing. They'd all be singing from the same page.
That's unfortunate.
No, I believe that there's more. I believe that there's more debate on the centrist right than there is on the left or the centrist left. I just do, and I basically almost always believe that. If you read Team of Rivals, which is the book about Lincoln's cabinet,
is the Daniel Day-Lewis movie kind of based on that too?
The Daniel Day-Lewis movie is kind of based on that, yeah.
Okay. No, I think that's a great point. I had another question.
I know that when I was in meetings, and I know from reading the transcripts of meetings, cabinet meetings, and the national security meetings, etc., when I was working in the Reagan White House, I know for a fact that there were a ton of different opinions, right? And everybody argued their own opinion, and the president is the one that made the decision, right? George Shultz did not always agree with the National Security Advisor, and vice versa. The Attorney General did not always agree with the White House counsel. I should say not always. Like, they very often disagreed, right? the Bush appointees, the Bush people that Reagan appointed had nothing in common with that political group. George Bush came from a very political family. They'd been in politics for years, right? They had kind of a political dynasty in Texas, and they represented sort of the moderate, establishment wing of the Republican Party, which Reagan had nothing to do with, right? Yet he appointed a lot of those people to jobs so he could get other opinions. He appointed Democrats to cabinet positions. Jean Kirkpatrick was a lifetime Democrat. She was the United Nations ambassador. She was the U.S. ambassador from the United States to the United Nations.
You brought up a point many times about how when you were younger, you would have debates with communists and then you would go drink and smoke weed with them afterwards and everything would be fine. You'd be friends. Do you think losing those connections early on are part of the reason why you think like a Kamala Harris cabinet wouldn't be able to be free? They wouldn't be able to speak their minds and there wouldn't be this variety of opinions because they didn't have that baseline of, hey, we can be friends with people that we disagree with?
Yeah, I do. I do intensely believe that. And even if they were from my generation, um, and had those experiences, I believe the current political climate, right, is so intolerant of other people's views that they wouldn't be able to do it, right? Current political climate is very intolerant of other people's views, right?
It is.
Yeah, it just truly is
Across the board, it is.
across
Across
the
the board.
board. Absolutely across the board. Goes without saying, across the board, right?
My
Um,
next, this is going to continue on with this conversation, but it just so happens that my next true or false question is this. There's a very fine line between an ideologue and a cultist.
True,
True or false? Yeah, I think it's true. I think
true.
that based on what you just said, you you have views, right? They're unchecked. You're not willing to discuss them. You're not willing to be open minded. You're willing to get spiritual satisfaction from your views. That leads you on to being an ideologue. Now you're an ideologue. Now you already get that spiritual satisfaction. Your ego's attached to it. You're so far into it that you find somebody that's preaching to that and they bring you so far into it. You're a cultist. Now you're believing Nick Fuentes. Now you're believing Hassan Piker. Now you need some really serious work before you can become part of the normal cohort of people again.
I've said
Would you
this
agree?
before, and I'm reticent to keep going back to a point that I've continually made. A lot of this goes back to COVID,
Mm,
right? You have a group, it's still to this day, a large number of people that wear masks outside because they don't want to get COVID outdoors, right? That, to me, in my opinion, they belong to the Church of Masks. They're in a cult. There's no amount of scientific evidence that supports that they should be wearing COVID masks outdoors. If you're wearing a mask outdoors because you have allergy problems, okay, one thing, yeah, uh, whatever.
well,
There's not
obviously, not talking about that.
right, and and once again, and it bears repeating. There's not a single recorded case in the whole world of anyone ever getting COVID outdoors because of casual interaction with passing people on the sidewalk or sitting in an outdoor cafe or anything. There are two unsubstantiated uh,
It's nothing worth bringing up as a possibility for a normal
correct.
person.
I mean,
There's
yeah,
no logical reason to
the
wear that out.
COVID that the COVID virus is not floating around in the lower atmosphere waiting to attack you. Right? It's not.
There's another reason why you're wearing that mask, and it's not a logical reason.
It's not a logical. And so to me, you're in a cult. I would also use that for the climate. for the climate people. There's a ton of evidence that proves that climate change is cyclical, right? But the climate alarmists are in a cult in that they believe that there's something man can do to change the climate when forces vastly, infinitely greater than man are the forces that change the climate. And I think they're in a cult, right? I think you're in a cult if you're out in the street blocking traffic, making automobiles idle for hours while you think you're protecting the environment. That's that is cult behavior. Like, no serious person believes that it's a good thing to make thousands and thousands of cars sit and idle, which creates what? Emissions, which create what? Greenhouse gases that they themselves say we need to cut back on, but you're actively creating more of.
And you're making it so working class people can't get to their jobs. So congratulations.
And you're blocking ambulances that need to get people to a hospital.
Yeah, that's slightly more important. But bear with me, I'm trying to think this through in real time. What I said about transitioning from an ideologue to a cult, and when you do that, you latch onto a personality like the Nick Fuentes, like the Hassan Piker. Do you think there's something to that? And do you think there's something to that that's new? I don't remember growing up there being these strong personalities and these like niche activist communities. I don't remember that really being a thing. I mean, you had Michael Moore's documentaries that were compelling. I still think he's great at that.
Yeah, there were a few of them, and they were few and
Okay.
far between. And they generally got mocked for what they were. A good example of that would be the nuclear freeze movement. The nuclear freeze movement believed that if they got tens of thousands of people to march in the streets against nuclear weapons being deployed in the cities of Europe, that would somehow create a safer, more livable world. And the opposite of that is what happened. What actually happened is the United States responded to the Soviets deploying thousands and thousands of intermediate range nuclear weapons in Europe that were targeted at the great cities of Europe. And the West, Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, Helmut Kohl, believed that countering that threat would bring the Soviets to the table to negotiate real arms reduction. And that's precisely what happened. I mean, Reagan personally negotiated the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, personally negotiated it, which eliminated, which dismantled, which abolished thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of nuclear weapons. He launched the START talks, strategic arms reduction talks, which have eliminated, dismantled tens of thousands of nuclear warheads. First strike weapons that the Soviets had built and targeted at the great cities of Europe and the United States and population centers in the United States, right? And the nuclear freeze movement was a cult then. So yeah, you had those kind of movements, but there are so many there are so many more cultist like movements since then. Remember all the feminists out with their pink pussy hats, pink vagina hats, and they had the craziest part about that is the organization that put it together literally had Islamic women who believed that covering your head, that being a slave to the patriarchy was fine.
Can I derail? Maybe we can close this off on a derailment that I didn't plan on. I was jogging the other day, and for the first time I saw a man walking with his wife who was wearing the full ass burqa, the whole ass thing, right? And I look over at the guy and I look over at the women while I'm jogging past them, and there's no hatred or animosity going through my mind because this is a man and a woman that are living their lives. They are products of the environment that they come from. I don't see a bunch of people with burqas around here, right? The guy looks like a nice enough guy, smiles. I don't know if the woman was smiling because, hence the
Yeah.
covering of the face. So I think on one hand, these are people who are probably nice, decent people who, if they grew up beside me in my environment, I could have been friends with and hung out with in high school. They are from a different place with a different set of values. So they came here, they're still wearing the burqa. I want them to be able to assimilate, for lack of a better term, and be a part of America. I don't wish any ill will on these two people. I want them
Neither
to
do I.
assimilate, and in a few years, this woman's, maybe wearing some taste. She doesn't have to be wearing a fucking miniskirt, but wearing something modest but still American and going to
Wearing
the
something
store.
that's not required by her religion.
Wearing something that's not required by her religion, but if she still feels like she wants to be modest, I totally 100% respect that. There's a line somewhere between me seeing this and wanting the best for them and me seeing this far too much and not giving a shit because it's too much of an imposition on normal American values. Right? And I don't think I'm evil for realizing that that line will exist at some point. But God, please, world, don't let me even come close to seeing that line because it's going to be bad for them, bad for me, bad for everyone. Mark, what do you think?
I agree with everything you just said. You made some really smart points. The point that I made and that you agreed with is the most salient point. If your ideology and your religion requires you as a woman to cover your face and cover your head, right? Then that's an ideology and a belief system and a religion that I don't have anything in common with and that I can't endorse, that I'm going to at times feel compelled to speak out against, right? I believe in personal liberty, political liberty, ideological um, diversity. And there is no world in which there's ideological diversity, where ideological diversity is compatible with a religion that forces women to be subservient to men or be subservient to whoever their God is that is requiring them to cover their face and cover their head.
Do you, the second point of that though is there's a critical mass, right? And it's when you grow up liberal and you grow up lefty and you still hold on to a lot of that as you grow older like me, you want to be welcoming to people. But as I age and I learn more about the world and I become more realistic, I understand that critical mass exists. And there's going to be a certain amount of burkas when I see 10 of them on a jog. That's going to be like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, we
Well,
can't
now
be
you're
having
describing
this.
Europe and now you're describing Britain.
Now I'm exactly what I'm getting at. Now I'm
Okay.
describing Britain. Exactly what I'm getting at. Yes.
Right. So the Constitution is not a suicide pact. Right.
Hmm.
We can welcome anybody here, and we do. The United States is the most generous, tolerant, open society in the world.
And we should be, and we should be
And
proud
we
of it. Would
should
you
be, and we
agree?
should never lose that.
Yes.
Right. That doesn't mean that our belief in those things needs to make a pact, needs to make a suicide pact with a ideology or a religion that we have nothing in common with, or seeks our destruction, right? So I read something the other day that was deeply, profoundly disturbing, and I think I sent it to you. Was it 60%? 60 some percent of American Muslims, or let's say,
It's like I know what you're sending. It's slightly under half.
is it slightly under half?
Yeah,
Was it 47%
I
or
can't
something?
remember the exact, but it's under half, slightly
Well,
under
let's
half.
just say it's under half.
Yeah,
Let's say it's 20%,
it's still too much.
right? And so here's the punchline: 40 some percent of Muslims living in America are sympathetic to Hamas. As welcoming and and diverse and as loving of our fellow men and women as you and I are, um, I work in a building with lots of Muslims. They're my friends. They're my colleagues. They are people that I go out to dinner with. They're people that have assimilated into American culture.
Some of the
Like,
best, coolest people I've met my entire life are Muslim. 100%. I'll die on that.
yeah, you have to make a distinction. People have to make the distinction between people of the Muslim faith and people who are Islamists. Islamists believe in political Islam, which is a hardcore, radical, rigid, dogmatic set of beliefs where there's zero tolerance for anything outside of that set of beliefs. Zero tolerance. Apostasy is punishable by death. Female genital mutilation is acceptable. They have a problem with gay people. They have a problem with trans people. I mean, need I say once again for the umpteenth time, queers for Palestine, right? Chickens for KFC, right? So, yeah, Europe is, and you don't have to go very far to see what's happened in Europe, right? Europe has imported millions and millions of Islamists from third world countries, and it is now a problem. They have a culture problem. They have a problem. They have a Stabby McStabberson problem, right? They have the Alu Akbar knifey terrorist problem. What's the Einstein quote on for every reaction? What is that?
There's are you talking about for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction?
Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Is that
Yeah,
what
I
he
think
said?
that's
For every
Isaac
reaction, there's
Newton.
an equal, and
I
yeah.
think that's
So
Isaac Newton.
people wonder why you might have a further right movement in Europe. Well, guess what? Guess why? You might wonder why there's an anti-migrant movement in the UK. Well, fuck. What did you think was going to happen?
I remember reading Douglas Murray's Strange Death of Europe shortly after it came out and thinking, oh, this is a bit far fetched. I no longer think that it's a bit far fetched. And I say this with total compassion to Muslims because they are by far the number one victims of political Islam.
They are the number one victims. They're the number one victims of political Islam in the death toll. Right? Right?
Yeah, try being Iranian and speaking up against the regime.
Try being a different sect of Muslim in Syria. Or
everything you read in history about the Protestants and Catholics killing each other shortly after the printing press came to be, that people like to talk about now, that's happening right now in Islamic countries. Not all of them, but some of them. I don't know, man. It's sad. The only point I wanted to make was I sincerely wish the best for those people I saw jogging, and I sincerely wish the best for everybody.
I wish the best for her, and we both wish the best for everybody.
And I think a lot of people would think that woman's husband's a piece of shit. I highly doubt he's a piece of shit. He's probably a good dude who loves his wife. This is just the environment that they came from, and they are adjusting. That's what I want to believe. That's what I choose to believe.
Well, I don't want to speculate on the husband that you're talking about.
He looked like a nice guy, man.
And he very well might be. Who knows what one would do in a certain situation, in a certain set of, uh, speaking for myself, I could not, I would be really uncomfortable with being with a person who was so wed to an ideology that they felt they had to cover their face and their head. I would want to enlighten them on the values of personal liberty that have been enshrined in the United States for hundreds of years, right?
And I don't have any drink left, but here's to me hoping that he sees those values and understands them.
What were you drinking, by the way?
Red breast. Hell yeah, bitch. None but the best in this house. Hey, man, love talking to you.
That was fun.
All right, man.
See you next week.
See ya.